All right, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm Eric Remington, Chairman of the Charter Revision Commission. I'd just like to ask, so the minutes are going to be prepared from the recording, so if you could remember, if you speak, to please state your name and your address for the record and for the recording. I failed to, mine's on. I don't know.
Okay, I'm not.
Okay.
Is there a light?
Mine has a green light.
Okay.
Does yours have a light?
No. You just hold it for a moment.
Yeah, hold it down for a second.
Okay. So in preparing the agenda, I failed to put on there the Pledge of Allegiance, so if we could lead with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 27th special meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second, Mike Haynes.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? I did have one item, and that is that after the minutes were prepared, I realized that they did not reflect the fact that we had decided to schedule a meeting for next Thursday, the 18th. So I would make a motion that we make that amendment to the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Next is the approval of the minutes of the June 27th public hearing. Is there a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Okay, Jeremy, thank you.
Second.
Mike beat you to it, right? All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. All right, so I'd like to open it up to public comment. Any public comment? Tom?
Hi, Tom Frenet, 489 Warnertown Road. A couple comments actually about the minutes. I would like to encourage you to have a little bit more detail in the minutes. I know what you've done is pretty much the minimum, I won't say the minimum, but not overly comprehensive, but I'd encourage you to expand on them because you're not getting a whole lot of, a whole big number of people to attend the meetings generally, and that's perfectly normal. But I think the more you can put in there with comment of the discussions, that would be helpful. I'm thinking of Dave Gauthier's comments at the public hearing last time, and Jill Scheckman's comments. I think you only had 3 sentences in there for her 30 minutes of presentation and back and forth and whatever. I think that'd be an improvement.
Okay.
The other thing is, the minutes from the 27th didn't accurately reflect my comments. It says that I pointed out the first selectman should not abstain since he was not present at past meetings. He doesn't get a vote. So that was the point that I made, is that at the last meeting, the vote was 4-0-1, 4 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstain. And I asked who abstained because it wasn't clear to me. And the first selectman said he was the one that abstained, and the problem was that he's not a member of the commission, so he doesn't even get a vote. And then the town attorney, I think, basically said it should be recorded as 4-0, and which is how you recorded it, but not the interchange correctly. So that's my constructive criticism about the minutes, I hope.
Yeah, no, and those are appreciated, and I would highlight that, we have secured a recording secretary, so I think you'll see an improvement in the minutes
Yeah.
going forward.
Okay, that's great.
Appreciate the
And-
comments.
And I'm glad you asked for people to identify themselves, because when you go back to listen to the meeting minutes, you don't do the video, so it's hard to tell sometimes who's saying what, so I appreciate your comments there. The other thing I'd like to talk about is, I think, a potential issue with the commission, because Mr. DeBoer apparently resigned and then decided to ask to stay on until a replacement is found. I don't see him here tonight, so at the last, you canceled your June 20th meeting about an hour or so before it took place, I presume because he had resigned earlier in the day. And once he resigned, and he said effective immediately, and I think you all got copied on his message that I think Colin forwarded. It said effective immediately. It didn't say, until the replacement is found, and that didn't come up until 6 or 7 days later, when he sent a follow-up message. And I presume that's because somebody realized that a 5-member commission is the minimum required for a charter commission. And you didn't really have that at the last meeting. Well, you did and you didn't, depending on how you look at it, because it's a 5-member commission. When one resigns, that becomes a 4-member commission, which means you can't do anything until you get that seat filled. And the Board of Selectmen has not met since then, so they haven't had a chance, or haven't chosen to fill the seat, or don't have the candidates, or I don't know. But they're not scheduled to meet now until late August. And it's my feeling that Mr. DeBoer on his own can't decide that, oh yeah, no, I'd like to stay on until the position is filled. I think that's something the selectmen themselves have to do. In the meantime, that leaves the commission short 1 member and with 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat, which is not allowed either. You can't have more than 1 member of one party than the other on a charter commission. So I think you ought to check with the town attorney on how to best handle it. I don't think it's in, it may mean that the actions you took at that last meeting weren't taken properly. And I don't want to see you go through this whole process and not have a good basis for the decisions you make. So I'd just be sure on that. And if you need to take some action to fix that, then I would, because if the steps you took last time shouldn't have been taken, then you shouldn't be chairman, as an example.
Right.
I don't think you made any other real decisions at the last meeting, but other than the minutes. But anyhow, I just want you to think about that. I think it was not handled quite correctly, and I'd like to get you on the right, on solid footing before you keep moving.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the concern. I mean, I did speak to the town attorney. I mean, he indicated that in his opinion, Rick is still a member of this commission, even though he's not here. But I would say, I understand your concern, but it seems to me that is an issue that is above the purview of this commission, I would say. So, I mean, I appreciate your concern. I would just say that that's probably an issue for the town attorney or the Board of Selectmen. I don't know, Kathy, if you have anything you want to say there.
I would just reiterate your comments that the town attorney believes that, because the second letter was accepted, saying that he would like his resignation held in abeyance until his replacement is appointed, that it's effective, and so he's still a member of the commission. So the town attorney has been consulted, but thank you for your comment.
Okay. You said it had been accepted. I don't know who accepted it. Did the commission, did this commission or the Board of Selectmen, or? I don't mean to go back and forth, sorry, but it,
As you know, we don't go back and forth, but it was, I believe he sent it to the first selectman, and then it was accepted.
Okay.
Okay. Duly noted.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Is that it?
That's enough.
Yeah, okay. All right, is there any other public comment? Yes.
Hi, I'm Sandra Janet, 380 Prospect Street.
Would you mind
Oh.
coming up to the microphone, please?
Oh, sure. I'll
No,
come
no, I'll
up
deliver.
here, Tom. I'll come up there. Here, I'll just come up here. It'll be easier. Hi, Sandra Janet, 380 Prospect Street. And thank you for addressing that, and I appreciate your words, and I appreciate that it was referred to Attorney Donnelly for consideration. And I'm gonna.
Excuse me, you're blocking the camera.
Oh, myself here? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I don't want to blow people away here. I have a loud voice. I appreciate all of that. But let me just reiterate some of my comments from last week. And what I'm thinking right now, given your explanation, and I don't mean that to be snarky, I honestly don't. At least, Kathy, thank you. I appreciate so much you sitting at the table this week. Last week, Colin told me you were a representative for women. You're sitting in the back of the room and you can't even vote. That doesn't bode well to address my concern for women representation. And now, I hear you, okay, I understand what Mr. DeFore did. I understand all the process of who it went to and who said what, and Mr. Donnelly has said that. Let me just say, okay, the man has not, he was not on Zoom the last meeting, he was not here the last meeting, he's not here, he's not participating, he's told you point blank he doesn't want to be on the commission, but we'll just hold it in abeyance until the next Board of Selectmen meeting, which is in the summer, and wasn't this commission supposed to be wrapped up by mid-August? Which is now the time of the next Board of Selectmen meeting. So in the meantime, you're operating with 4 people and 1 Democrat. Because the man's not making any judgments, he's not acting as part of the commission, he's just saying, let me hold my spot, I don't want to use it, but I don't want anybody else to use it. And I frankly wonder why he came up with that a week after he resigned. I mean, what all of a sudden made him think, gee, you know what? It might be a good idea if I held my spot in abeyance for a week, even though I resigned, and wrote multiple places that I resigned and was very emphatic about it, saying I didn't want to get involved. So all I'm saying is, and I know I'm being loud and boisterous, but I'm saying I don't see any female representation like you're trying to tell me there is. I don't see representation by 2 Democrats like there needs to be. I don't see representation by a full committee. And if the committee can't, by definition, I'm thinking, if the selectmen have to appoint it, they're not meeting until mid-August, we're way past the date of, and what is the expiration date of this commission? Wasn't it to expire before the November? I'm asking. Do you know, Kathy?
August 21st?
No, I'm
The day
asking.
they're supposed to report back to the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, it is that date. Okay, thank you. So we're not meeting back until then.
Right.
But I'm saying, wasn't the work of this commission, wasn't it set out saying specifically it wanted the work done by that time frame?
I think it was,
Okay, and that's my point is, I guess I'm over my
I
time
don't think we
frame.
need to go back.
And I'm beating a dead horse, as Kathy's face is telling me, thank you. And I'm not picking on you, you just happen
You're
to
not
be.
picking on me.
You know, I know I'm not, you happen to be the one person I feel I can actually speak with here. Not that you guys are doing anything wrong, but again, I don't think your board represents the town, and I don't, either in gender or in party affiliation at this moment, I don't think you're functioning that way, and I don't think you have the ability to, since this man is not cooperating and wants his seat just held blank. And with that, I will shut up and quit beating this dead horse. Thank you for your comments, for allowing me to make comments.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
And this is Mike Haynes, just one comment. I think from the commission standpoint, I think we need to be careful about getting involved in a Q&A session. You know, public comment is just making a comment, not asking questions. So I just want to, you can ask questions, of course, but
Well, I do
just
appreciate
getting to
the
that
information you gave me.
is a
Thank you.
challenge. So just my comment.
Agreed. Okay, is there any other public comment? Nobody in the room. I don't see anybody on Zoom. One last chance. No. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is town treasurer interviews. So, one of the items that we were tasked with looking at was changing the town treasurer position from the current elected. The charter currently calls for it to be an elected position, and moving that to an appointed position. So I've invited Casey Colston, for those of you that don't know Casey, who's our existing treasurer, I think for about 2 years now. And just, I had the benefit of, as director of finance, working with Casey for about a year and a half. So I've got that background and know the great work that she does and the conscientious efforts that she puts forth on behalf of the town. So I'm pleased to have her here. And I've also invited Christine Davidson, who was a long-standing treasurer before Casey. There was another treasurer for a short period of time in between. But I think, the most institutional knowledge that we have is before us tonight. So we appreciate both of you being here. And I know maybe we could start with Casey. I know you did a write-up, but I thought maybe it might be helpful for you to just maybe talk about your background, how you came to be treasurer, and then maybe go through what you do as treasurer in your role today.
So I took over as treasurer in April of 2022. The previous treasurer was having a hard time keeping up with the duties.
Is your microphone on?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it?
No,
I
that's
can- I
fine,
can-
just double checking. So I just want to make sure it's being recorded.
And I was willing and available, so I took that over in April. My background is project management. I am not a finance person. I was a senior project manager for Cigna for 30 years, and entirely in the information technology space. And I did little projects and big projects and multi-year projects and big budgets and complicated budgets with lots of changes and cost-benefit analysis. And I'm very comfortable with online systems, and I'm pretty good with spreadsheet. So when they were looking for someone to take over, I volunteered. I put together some notes today for how I came in and what I'm doing. The first paragraph is basically what it says on the town website about the responsibilities of the town treasurer. I mostly don't do that. What I do is very transactional. I started, I said, April 11th, 2022. There's a stipend. That was a surprise to me. It was a $9,400 a year stipend. I was elected to a 4-year term in November of last year, and during the budget negotiations this year, the Board of Finance elected to raise my salary to $15,000 a year. So basically, it's going from 12 to 15 an hour to 15 to 20 an hour in terms of the amount of effort I put in.
So we may or may not be above minimum wage.
Well, no, it's lovely, I appreciate it. In addition to being treasurer, the treasurer is an ex officio member of the Helena Bailey Spencer Tree Fund Committee, and a member of the Retirement Commission. So I've been attending the HBS meetings, the Retirement Commission meetings, and I attend almost all the Board of Finance meetings. The focus of the work I'm doing is twofold. One is to make sure the checks don't bounce. The other is to take the money that we don't have committed for checks being paid in the next 2 weeks and get it into some place where it will earn more interest than the 0.15 we get from People's Bank. We have CDs at TD Bank that we do for the town. We have CDs at People's Bank that we do for the Board of Education. We invest the cemetery funds, extra cemetery funds with Fidelity. I move a lot of money, right now I'm moving a lot of money into the state's short-term investment fund, which is getting us 5.4%. And I literally, with the tax money coming in, I literally move money every single day. I do it before 10:30 in the morning so that it gets filed with them for the night, and we get that interest the next morning. And the reason that we're able to make money is because the finance environment changed. I mean, we went from 0.25 interest being okay interest to 0.25 interest being not worth picking up off the ground. So this is, I didn't personally create $1 million, but the aggressive management of those funds got us $1 million, a little over $1 million for fiscal year 2022 and a little 23, and almost $1.8 million for fiscal year 23-24.
And just for a frame of reference, I think the budget for FY '23 was $125,000, if I recall correctly.
Yes,
Yeah, for
I
interest.
probably have it here somewhere,
Yeah.
but, yeah, it was unanticipated.
Right.
I mostly work 10 to 15 hours a week. I like to go into the office, I like the people I work with, I like working there. So they've got a little cubicle I use, I do online stuff from the finance office, 9 or 10 hours a week, 3 afternoons a week. I log on from home every morning. I have a secure ID token, so I can securely log on to TD Bank, which is where the majority of the money is. I have account set up with People's Bank that requires me to wait for them to send me a verification number so that when I log on from home, it is verified. And Stiff is a little bit looser with that. Stiff is basically user ID password. But the Stiff, it's all I can do with Stiff is move money from TD Bank, from the general fund at TD Bank into Stiff, and move money from Stiff back into the general fund at TD Bank, and into the general fund at People's Bank. So there's not like money could be going to anybody else. But it's, as I said, I try to be in the office 3 days a week. Sometimes it's more depending on what's going on. There are a bunch of things I do every day, every work day. First thing in the morning, I log on and make sure that the general fund accounts have enough money in them, that the payroll account has enough money in it, the payroll tax account has enough money in it, and the insurance fund has enough money in it. We keep our insurance fund, we try to keep, I try to keep $500,000 in the insurance fund so that when insurance bills are presented, and the insurance, the people who we pay insurance to literally just take the money. So it may be $500,000 one night, the next morning, it's $340,000. And I have alarms set up so that I get it, my town email gets an alarm if the amount goes below $450,000, so I know first thing in the morning, I need to move more money into there, because we do not want Cigna calling us up and saying, you're not paying your co-insurance. So I also every morning check for transactions coming in from the Munis system, which is where the town approves work requests, requisitions. Any requisition over $1,000 goes automatically to Colin Mall's queue for approval, now to Mandy Moore's queue for approval, and then to my queue for approval, until all three of us have approved it online. It does not go to Marie Bork for payment. I also get emails regularly from Mary Poit at the Board of Ed, Laura Garrett at the Board of Ed, Julie Nigro at WPCA, asking for specific fund transfers to take place, either to move money between the general fund accounts at People's Bank and TD Bank, or to do a wire transfer, an ACH transfer, whatever. But they come in every day. And there's also occasionally paper checks. I had to go into the office today right now the new assistant director of finance is sitting in the cubicle where I sat. So I'm doing work from home until they get his new office set up, and I had to go sign a check. First week of the month is very busy because the Board of Finance drives me nuts. So if you take a look at the opposite side of this
Not
thing I gave you,
intentionally.
this multicolored chart, which many of you have seen before, is basically the breakdown of, this one's at the end of June, what our balances were at all the town accounts, and what part of that was interest or reinvestment income. And I deliver this to the Board of Finance at their meeting every month. And there's also a companion piece which takes some of these numbers and tracks interest, accumulated interest through the fiscal year. And I just finished that yesterday, and we came up with the 1.77 million number, which is very, very close to the 1.8 million that Eric Harrington was thinking we would hit. So close, but not over. But I threw it in so you could kind of see what the accounts look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think an important thing to note here is just that, I mean, if, you know, looking at this, I mean, the treasurer literally has the ability, has access to almost 36, you know, as of the end of June, you know, $36 million in cash, and, you know, in the month of July, we're gonna bring in, 60% of our revenue for the year. So this is gonna swell to, yeah, $50–60 million.
And then we spend it every month, so.
Right.
It's a good point you make that I do have access to all this money, but the structure, the
Checks and
structures the town has in place keep me from running off to the Caribbean for the rest of my life. And that's a big chunk of the work I do in the first week of the month, is every single transfer that I make, even if it's just Mary Poit asking me to move $15,000 from a school account into the town's general fund account, every single one of those transfers needs to be documented at the end of the month. So I have to have the list of the transfers, what the bank transfer ID was, so you can go right back to People's or TD Bank and say, look up this bank number for me, or you can look it up online, and a copy of, so the request, who came in from whoever, and a copy of the bank confirmation, which says, from this account to this account, this amount, this note, whatever. Different banks have different formats for it, but every single one of those gets documented. Marie checks every single one. We also had Sal in working as a kind of a half-time assistant finance director, and he checked all the big ones. So if I were to abscond with a bunch of money, we would know.
Could you?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
The only time we ever bumped into something where it would have been conceivable for someone to abscond, where I'm aware that it could have been conceivable to abscond with money, was right after Colin Mall started, and I was brand new at that time too. And People's Bank he already had accounts at People's Bank, so they just kind of added the town accounts to his accounts.
Right.
And that got fixed within about a week and a half. But so, and he had obviously no interest in running off with money either. So.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's Mike Haynes, and I guess the reason for the question has a couple of different facets to it, right? One is a question about, is your position bonded?
No. Yes. Oh, is it?
It always has been.
Okay, how would I know?
It's, yeah, it's not bonded for a lot of money, but there is a small bond. You wouldn't necessarily know that.
Apparently not.
Yeah, I would like to know how much that is.
Okay.
You know, and the other question about, could you, obviously you wouldn't, but could you run away with all the money and end up the rest of your years in the Caribbean or wherever? There was a situation with the prior treasurer where, he sent funds to someone else that wasn't supposed to have those funds. So that, I'm not aware, had all those checks and balances when that occurred. So I guess my question is has things changed now to where that could not happen? By just you? I mean, obviously a mistake by 3 people could happen, but I would think that's pretty rare.
So I never really dug into what happened with that, but I will tell you, every 3 months or so, I get a very convincing looking email from somebody like Kathy Denai, or from another employee, or genuine employee name, with a email address that looks mostly Town of Suffield, saying something like, I really need to have this amount of money sent to this bank account because it's an emergency and something's gonna happen or whatever. And knowing that we got scammed once, I look at all of the likely tells, and they're all there. So I just,
Good.
I contact the IT department just to let them know what happened, and I trust the email.
Yeah, I mean, the other, and I'd be careful how much detail we go into, given this is a public meeting and we don't necessarily want to let everybody know how everything works mechanically, but for any money to be transferred outside of a town account, it requires 2 approvals. So Casey and one other person, either the director of finance or the first selectman. So she can set up a wire to transfer money, but it can't leave. She could go from one bank account to another, but if it's going to leave a town account, it requires a second approval.
Yeah.
Just answer my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say that, we've had, because we've been thinly staffed in the finance department, there's a lack of segregation of duties that, having that second approval within the department was just not an option. So I think, that's one reason that I think Casey does a lot of the day-to-day stuff that she does, is because it benefits the town, because we do have that lack of segregation of duties. Now, we've subsequently hired a full-time assistant director of finance, so, there's some options maybe to take some things off her plate, but it's been a necessity up until this point.
So every other week I move money for either the Board of Ed payroll or the town payroll taxes and HSA contributions. Monthly, I do wire and ACH transfers for pension and teachers' retirement board and 457 and what have you. I do bank administration, so I create templates for the standard wire transfers, and I maintain them so that when something changes, I'm the one who goes in and fixes the templates. Each time I change a template, that information goes to Colin and to the director of finance to see that I changed a template. And then I do a lot of little things that come up. Like right now, tax season, I'm moving money 3 or 4 times a week. We did a housing grant. Bill Hawkins managed to get us a big bunch of money to improve some of the low-income housing stock for the town. And the state wanted a dedicated account for that, and there was a lot of administrivia around getting that set up correctly. And then it took a couple of weeks to convince the town or the state to actually use the account that we had told them about 6 months earlier, rather than to try to send the money to an account that had been closed 4 years ago. So it's that kind of thing takes a lot more time than you would ever imagine. People's Bank, who bought First National Bank of Suffield, at the time that they bought First National Bank, they didn't bother to convert any of the old 4-digit or 5-digit account numbers into 10-digit account numbers. So we're doing that now. And that also is really not going particularly smoothly. For the tree committee, they have money from Helena Bailey Spencer Tree Fund, which is an account at the town. They have money with the Val Gallivan Fund, which is an account held at the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. They created an account with the town and the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving for Trees for Suffield, which they're trying to raise about $100,000 to provide not only planting new trees, but maintenance for existing trees, which was not covered. And so I put together every month before their meeting, I put together a kind of an omnibus finance snapshot that says this is where your money is. And we're working, trying to make sure that the money, all the money that's held in the town, which is some Trees for Suffield money and the Helena Bailey Spencer Tree Fund money, that's tracked effectively in the munis system where the town keeps track of everybody's money. Trees for Suffield was created with the help of Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. So when there are large donations, they are tax deductible because they go to the Hartford Foundation as a tax deductible donation. When they raise money at a farmer's market, it goes directly into the account, the munis account. But the big challenge is, probably the thing that takes me most of my time with them, is when somebody comes with 3 receipts for stuff that they bought for a promotional event. So you've got a $27 receipt from Staples, you've got $6.50 that showed up in the donation bucket. So it comes into town hall and it's like, what do we do with this? So I get to do that. I mean, Marie Bork does the work, but I kind of like make sure that it's coded correctly so she knows what to do with it. Retirement Commission. Somehow I ended up as chairman of the Retirement Commission. I'm not qualified to give retirement advice or do a retirement analysis, but I can run a meeting, so I get it. Sustainable Suffield came through about 1.5 years ago. They wanted to compost. They wanted to give town residents composting bins. They signed up with a third-party fundraiser called Patronicity to raise the money, help raise the money, and Patronicity, of course, peeled, I'd say about 7.5% off the top. But we had to set up a special account for that, move the money into it, have Patronicity drop the money in it, and then we moved the money back out, put it into munis. But we continue to get, we buy more bins. We did the school food composting. Each one of those things involves expenses, but Sustainable Suffield doesn't have a staff. It's a couple of volunteers. There's no town employee, so they can't do munis requisitions. It's like, how do we do this? So there always ends up being little tasks to run around and do with that. And then basically any time one of these little, how do we do this things come up, I don't, because it's project management. I mean, it's a little teeny project management, but that's what I do. And it's fun.
Questions?
Go ahead. Oh, good. Thanks, Jeremy. Ray Dalrymple. I know you haven't worked for multiple administrations, but some of these positions that we are interviewing. What is your take? What are your pros and cons, do you think, about this particular position being an elected official versus a hired employee?
So I think Eric touched on this a little bit. One of the reasons that I do so much transactional work is because there really wasn't anybody else around to do it. It was easy enough for me to step into it. I'm retired, I'm a busybody, what the heck. I think that now that we have an assistant finance director, the day-to-day stuff, I need to work with Mandy to figure out what she thinks can be incorporated into the assistant director position and what needs to stay one step away. I think the interest analysis needs to stay one step away. I think the seeking of investment opportunities, but it's not that they're wildly creative. The state is very, very clear about what you can invest in and what you can't. But the transactions around seeking like moving money around to get the best investment value is something I think I can keep. Producing the reports for the Board of Finance, I think I'd like to keep doing. But I think it could be cut, the part of the work I need to do, I think could be cut way back. And as thrilled as I am with the stipend I receive, I'm not at all sure that a streamlined treasurer position, based on what I'm able to do, would need to be compensated. So I'm not sure it makes sense to create a 15-hour-a-week job when I'm probably going to end up with half of that in terms of the amount of effort put in.
So I'm hearing that you probably would recommend, suggest that it remains an elected
Yeah.
position. And does the, Ray Dalrymple, the hiring of an assistant finance director would probably help out with the segregation of duties issue
Well,
somewhat?
so that, it's traditionally been a part-time role. There's been a part-time assistant director of finance, and it's now gone to full-time as of July 1st.
And it's an actual employee as opposed to a contractor,
Right.
which I think changes liability stuff.
It does, but, that role is where the bank reconciliations have traditionally sat.
Would be assistant finance director?
Yeah, so, just putting my auditor hat on, that would have to be figured out, that if the assistant director of finance is the person that takes on a lot of the tactical things that Casey does today, I don't think from an internal control standpoint, you want that same person doing the bank reconciliations.
Right.
So, that's something I think we'd have to work out with Mandy as to how she would see the segregation of duties working there. So, so your opinion is that the duties maybe need to get shifted around, but that there's still a role for an elected
Yeah.
treasurer? Because, we didn't really talk about, because we haven't necessarily borrowed any money, but, and back to my corporate experience, when you think about a traditional treasurer role, it's, cash management, the balance sheet. So, you're doing the cash management piece, maybe more of a tactical level than you might like to, just because there's nobody else to do it. But it would seem to me, if, when we get into a situation where we're bonding again, which at some point we're going to do in the future, that you would play a bigger role in that activity as well.
I like what I do, and I'm not desperate to get rid of any of these tasks. But just in terms of, it's just sometimes it seems like, when I'm moving like $45, it kind of seems like, okay, happy.
Right. Okay, any other questions for Casey?
The only other thing I'm kind of interested, we've talked about this with other candidates too, in terms of, and you mentioned you were a project manager, sort of, we talked about certifications. I know that maybe this is a little bit different, but do you have something like a PMP or something like that that you feel, okay, and can you maybe expound upon how that might apply in terms of the day-to-day roles that you?
Well, PMP is a project management professional certification from Project Management Institute, and I got that 25 years ago, 20 years ago. It was much harder to study for than anything I did in college, and the test was so painful that I would do anything to avoid ever having to do it again. But there are financial units, there are process units. The idea is that if you're a PMP, you can walk into any company anywhere and manage a multi-million-dollar project and be successful. And a lot of it is really around figuring out how to do things, and with work breakdown structures, and how you capture cost savings. I also did I got a green belt for Six Sigma, which is process improvement. And I did 2 years of business process reengineering, which was all around trying to achieve cost savings by eliminating redundancy in the work, and unfortunately eliminating the employees at the same time. But there were a lot of financial justifications, and the hardest thing in the world I found to do was to actually achieve the cost savings that people build into their cost benefit analysis. Because they'll come out and say, here's all the money we're gonna save by eliminating 5% of these 20 people, and it's like, cool, we're gonna take this person. But what about the skills that you needed? Well, that guy's gone now, so you said 5% of 20 people is 1%, is 100% of one person, so off you go. And it doesn't happen, and I did a lot of evaluation of projects where a senior manager really wanted to do this project, and they did it, and then it comes back to the PM, the project management organization at Cigna, to document how the savings were achieved, and it was bad.
Casey, it's nice to meet a fellow Lean Six Sigma greenman. I didn't think they were ready. Where'd you go to school for that?
Cigna brought in trainers for it.
Okay.
And I was actually, at the time that I decided to retire, I was in queue for a month of black belt training too.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, I got my certificate at Purdue, and I actually taught an MBA class at American International College in Lean Six Sigma. So
Cool.
it's interesting stuff.
They weren't quite too lean yet. It was really the beginning of it, or like it must have been 10 years ago. I've got, on my resume it actually has the dates, but those brain cells died.
Okay. Oh, sure.
Hi Casey, it's Kathy Harrington. Just so, because we did ask this of our last interview as well, are there any town employees that you oversee or that work with you or that report directly to you?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Casey. So I'd like to move to Christine, but reserve the right to come back to Casey
Oh,
if we have further questions. So I think I introduced Christine in the beginning. So Christine, maybe if you could give some your background, your experience as treasurer, if your duties differ from Casey, maybe you could talk about those.
A lot of the things that Casey does are things that I developed during the time when I was the town treasurer. I was town treasurer for 12 years. After having been on the board of selectmen and other positions. When I took over that job, we were very short on staff, number one. Number two, we had no policies, procedures, we had no structure whatsoever. The first day after election, I was handed one piece of paper with 4 account numbers on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had to start from scratch. Now, I have a financial background, I have a management background, I'm the vice president of a company. I also do take care of all their finance. So, for me, it was really just a matter of now starting to write procedures, starting to come up with templates, things that now Casey has and is continuing, were things that were created. Actually, now it's got to be 18, 19 years ago. All right. So You know, and I'm glad to see that these are all in place, because there's no way that you can have the checks and balances that you have to have if you don't have those procedures there's things, of course, that now are done by staff that we didn't have staff to do before. There are also things that I don't think that Casey has gotten involved in, nor the treasurer before her, in the fact that we did a couple of bonding things while I was treasurer. Some of those things took a little long time to, you know, write all the applications and work with financial companies and do all that. So with more staff, however, in the town itself, I'm sure that a lot of that then would be taken over by them and not done by a treasurer. Maybe just endorsed or reviewed or whatever, but I mean, I had to get to the point of actually working with every department in order to build all the paperwork. So, I think we're in much better shape than we ever were. I think we have more checks and balances. We certainly have more procedures than we had in the past. My main thing, you know, when Eric and I spoke, was that, you know, whether or not it should be elected or appointed. I believe that it should be elected position. There is a couple of reasons. One, the state statutes clearly defines what town treasurers should do. They're also, by being elected and not appointed, there's no influence of other staff people or other people into what you do or how you do it. So when you're doing things that are controversial or different or instructed by someone, you have the ability to say, no, that's not the best way to do it, that's not the procedure we should be following, or I don't see that that's the way we should do it, and be independent of somebody that would appoint you to the job. So, you know, as far as, you know, my background, I think that that's very important to have that independence to be able to think through a problem, look at all the pieces, and evaluate it all independently when it's necessary. So, but as far as mechanics, Casey got that down pat now. and like I said, we have a lot more staff now that can do more things, but essentially it's the same things we've been doing for years. So it's more if you have specific questions that I could help with.
So, Christine, it's Mike Haynes, just a question. I know Casey spoke a great deal about the amount of time that she spends in the position. What was your experience like when you were in
When
office
I
for
was
those
doing
years?
it, I would say it was at least 10 hours a week. I did not work, however, in the town hall at all.
It was strict.
One, there was no place for me to even work
Right.
at the time. But I also, most of everything that needed to be needed done during the day. And since I had another job during the day,
Right.
I basically did my town job while I was doing my other job as things came up.
Good, thank you.
So, when you said one of the reasons you think it should remain elected versus appointed is the independence, and, you know, if somebody asks you to do something that you don't think is right or should be done that way, that you have the ability to say no.
Yeah.
I mean, were there examples over time where either somebody in finance or first selectman asked you to do something?
I think, yes, we
Yeah.
had some first selectmen that were very opinionated on the way things should be done, or wanting to even change a procedure that didn't make sense, or other people doing things that the treasurer did. Oh, well, we could have someone else do that. Well, no, because I need to make sure that it is done correctly. No, nobody else is going to move money, type thing. We had a problem at one point with the school system of people just going to the bank and opening up accounts. So one of the things I did during the years I closed about 40 accounts because they were school activities, alumni accounts. They were things that were on our federal ID number with our name, but the money never came from the town. It never really belonged to the town. And they had signers on them that weren't even part of the town. So I did a lot of cleaning up like that. And you were basically saying, you cannot open an account without the treasurer's involvement. It's gonna cut down on a lot of things that all of a sudden take on a life of their own. So, I think we have that under control.
But it's not like people do things maliciously.
No, they just
It's
don't
just-
realize the implications of it. So when you all of a sudden, you have an account and it's got $20,000 in it, but you have no idea who these people are, you have no idea what reason they were, but they're under our federal ID number, and they're being reviewed at the time of audit by the auditors on the list of accounts that belong to the town. You don't want them on the list. You want them independent. You want somebody else opening it that is going to be using it in the future or using it for, for example, we had quite a number of class accounts that they were going to use for future reunions. Those needed to be handed by somebody who was in that class, that was authorized by that class to be in charge of that. So, and over the course of closing them all, we'd get a couple here and there would come up and show up with a savings passbook and say, oh, that's our money. I'm like, okay, bring me all the info and we'll make sure that that money gets returned to you because we know exactly where we moved it to. So I think cleaning up all of that and having someone that's really got the eye on the whole picture. I mean, that's the other thing. You've got the school, you've got the town hall, you've got different departments, you've got income coming into the building department, you've got income coming in other places. It's kind of nice to have somebody that just sort of overall understands everything and makes sure that it all fits into the same system.
If you have any of those old accounts hanging around, class of 77 could use a few bucks.
No. But, I mean, that was a big problem. We had a ton of accounts. No, and we also had, scholarship accounts that are endowments that were not being managed per the state law as well. So we had to reorganize those and say, you have to calculate what the value of the money of the principal is that has to stay in. You can only give away your interest, things like that that needed to be researched and fixed. And once they're fixed, I think we're fine, but,
And this cleanup took, what time frame was it? Like you said, was it 19 years ago?
oh yeah, it was a long time ago. And it took me a couple of years to get everything,
Yeah. To me, 19 years isn't too long ago
Well,
for this stuff to happen.
I mean, but some of it, I had accounts that went back 20, 30 years. And try to get those accounts fixed when the people who actually opened them aren't even alive anymore. Or there's a first selectman's name on them that doesn't exist anymore. So that's where we needed some, that oversight that's not just sitting in some staff that, a certain selectman or a person who's in charge of a department says, oh, here, open this account for this. We have to have better oversight and rules as to what it is and who manages it.
Yeah, I think a lot of, it used to be traditionally, it was just, every time you had a specific purpose, you'd open a bank account.
Yeah.
As opposed to now, a lot of that's just tracked on the general ledger as opposed to having it all.
And that's exactly
separate
correct.
accounts.
That's why we had so many. I mean, First National Bank had 40-something accounts at one point.
So,
We're not much short of that.
Huh?
We're not much short of that.
Well.
I know at some point, there was an RFP process that resulted in TD being named the bank's,
Mhm.
or the town's primary financial institution.
Yes.
And was that during your tenure?
Yes.
Yeah,
The last one that was done was during my tenure.
okay.
Probably the last year or two. we did one other one before that while I was treasurer as well.
Okay.
And so that's time consuming. Again, I wrote up the RFP, I basically oversaw it, we did all the interviewing, we did all the analysis. And basically the treasurer at the time, which was me, as well as the first selectman, anybody who sat in on the meetings, we had a small group of people. And when, you have to decide what commitments you're gonna make when you do an RFP. Sometimes it's gonna be a certain percentage is gonna stay in that bank, sometimes you're gonna be able to move it. And we did have a little problem after I left because the person who came in decided they were gonna do what they wanted to do and not follow the agreed to and signed contract with the bank. So that's another reason sort of to keep it a little bit separate too.
Sure.
Good question. So this is Kathy Harrington. I'm not sure if either of you ladies know what the percentages or what the numbers are in the Connecticut towns for treasurers that are elected versus employed.
I don't know. I actually did look at one point to find out. I think a lot of them are elected. If you look online, it'll have a bunch of towns and they'll say elected treasurer, elected treasurer. I mean, there are a number, I think there are a couple other jobs, like town clerk and tax collector and others. Some towns elect and some towns appoint.
Maybe that might be something, I wonder if Karen Ziemba, who's in HR, if she has like contacts, could get us a list, do you think?
We can ask CCM, might be able to pull that together, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there an association of town treasurers that you're
No.
aware of?
Not that
There's
I'm
the
aware of.
Government Finance Officers Association, but, okay, we can check there too. Any other questions from anybody?
This is Jeremy. I just wanted to kind of clarify and make sure that I understood. It sounded like you were also kind of agreeing in terms of like the part of the description that we have here that's on the town website and based on what you described. You're doing a lot, you were doing a lot more than what is just kind of listed
I
here.
think, yes, I was, we only had like one finance person and we had a part-time payroll person. We really did not have a lot of staff when I first took over.
Oh.
In a little bit better shape now.
Do I have anything else?
I'm good.
Anything else either of you ladies would like to communicate?
I don't think so.
No?
No, good.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know if it were me, I'd think of a million things after I left here tonight, so feel free to.
And if you have questions that come up afterwards, I'm certainly willing to, come back and talk to you or answer them, by letter or whatever, or email. I'm sure Casey would as well.
You all know how to find me.
Yeah, you're not, well, and Eric knows how to find me. So, but I worked with Eric when he was chairman of the retirement commission.
Well, thank you both for
Yeah, thank you.
appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda was just, in the event, anybody else, I was able to find anybody else to come and talk about the treasurer's position tonight, and I didn't, so I think we can skip that agenda item.
Yep.
So the next item is discussion of future meetings, any research or additional interviews that we might want to do. So, we had the tax collector, and tonight we did the treasurer. Next Thursday, the town clerk is coming to speak to us, so we can have that discussion. I did think that I would like to bring in previous first selectmen, if they're willing to come in, just to talk about their experiences and their thoughts on the changes that we're considering making. So I can extend those invitations.
And what are you thinking of?
There's 4 or 5 of them that are still around that, there's Ed McEnany, Melissa Mack, Tom, was first selectman, Scott is still around. I'm probably forgetting some, but I think those are the most recent that, we could at least invite them in and
Yeah.
see if they have anything that they'd like to communicate.
Kathy, what about the current first selectman?
Oh, yeah, we've talked to him about coming in as well, so,
Okay.
yeah, he would certainly be on the list.
Okay.
And I know, I did have somebody reach out to me today from another board or commission that suggested that we look at the description of their commission in the charter. So I don't know if anything formal will come in on that, but yeah, that might be something that we add to the agenda. If they do submit something formally, I can certainly add that to a future agenda. But as so I think, after next week, and I'll see if I can get some of the first selectmen in to the meeting next week with the town clerk as well. I don't know that there's any because our current tax collector and town clerk are so long-serving, I don't think there's any of their predecessors that are available to come and talk to us. Christine's predecessor as treasurer is still around, so I could talk to him and see if he'd be willing to come in. So I think we can extend invitations to some of those people. As far as research goes, we talked just now about getting some information about treasurers that are elected versus appointed. I think Jill provided us some information along those lines for tax collectors. And I'm sure we can get that information for town clerks
That would be helpful.
as well. I don't know if there's other research or information that we'd like to gather. If anybody's got anything specific we can talk about.
Yeah, I think the only thing, and Kathy raised the question, but I think it would be great to understand for all three positions across the state, how many are elected versus appointed, if we can get that information without too much challenge.
Right.
And just to kind of follow up with that, I think the other aspect that would be helpful for me is to understand which towns have it which way. So in other words, are the large cities, leaning more one direction and the small towns another direction, or something to that effect?
Good perspective to gain.
Okay. We can certainly work on that. So that strikes me as that, that is probably a couple meetings worth of information. So, I have my calendar handy. I think that takes us through July.
We have a meeting scheduled for the 25th, correct?
The
as well?
18th and the 25th.
18th and 25th, yeah.
So, at that point, I think we might be in a position at least to have an initial conversation about, what we're thinking as far as, each of the three positions and how we might want to proceed. I think, that then raises, depending on which direction we want to go, it raises questions about how do you restructure, if in fact we do want to make changes to those roles, what does that look like? And ultimately that results in, potentially changing language in the charter, that language has to be drafted. So, the date we've got for I think an August 21st report to the Board of Selectmen, is that the date, Kathy? Yeah.
That is, and I also have in here that we had for August 8th,
Public hearing.
right, a public hearing, as well as another meeting. And I think that would we have to issue the report before the public hearing so that people could actually come and comment, I think
I
is.
think that's a question for Derek, so.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that that was my understanding, so we may want to consider whether or not we need to add one on August 8th, sorry, August 1st, which would be the week, you know what I mean, which would make us like a weekly meeting. I can certainly hold it open on my calendar, I don't know about anybody else, in case that's needed.
I mean, I think at this point, I don't know what people's availability is, but I think that probably makes sense. We were to add a meeting on August 1st.
Just to check.
I'm good.
It would be a special meeting.
I mean, it strikes me that it's still, you know, to have a signed, sealed, and delivered package to the Board of Selectmen on August 21st is a hill for climbers at this point, but, you know, I mean, I think we have to report, we don't necessarily have to have a finished product. You know, because I think, you know, if we choose to make changes, you know, that raises issues about the transition. You know, the three current office holders were elected to 4-year terms, I think just last November. So, you know, that requires, you know, a thoughtful effort to understand, you know, how does the transition actually work? If we were to make a change and make those positions appointed, you know, do we, I don't even know if we can change that. If somebody's been elected to an office, can we just eliminate the office they've been elected to? Or do we have to let the term run out and make the change effective after that? I mean, that may be putting the cart before the horse, but I think it's just an example of there's a lot of work here. It may seem very simple to just say, okay, either we're gonna change or we're not gonna change, and then, you know, we're done. I mean, I think there's a
potential for a lot of work.
yeah, if we choose to make a change to the charter, I think there's a lot of work there involved to get us to a point where we've got something to present to voters, so.
There's a lot of detail that you're pointing out.
Right.
And even if it's just changing the language to some of the job descriptions, I think we've uncovered a couple of things or opportunities here that regardless of which way the positions go, you know, we may want to make those clarifications based on at least what I've heard so far.
Agreed. And we haven't even gotten into the statutory requirements.
Right.
That go with all these positions, so. So, I mean, I think we're all up for the work, is the sense I have. It's just, the calendar works against us if, at this point, to
Yeah.
meet the deadline that's been put before us.
Yeah, one of the biggest short-term challenges is trying to get as many of those folks that we just talked about to be available to sit with us, at least one of those next 2
weeks.
Thursdays, yeah.
Just kind of piggybacking on the schedule a little bit. I don't know if I completely agree with the comments that Tom made in terms of his enthusiasm related to that, but I do share the concern in terms of having an absentee member on the committee, regardless of political affiliation. I do think it would be beneficial to have that either reconfirmed that they're going to come and participate. You know, obviously people get busy and that kind of thing, or do we need to have a replacement? Because this is a commitment, this is a big decision. You know, again, some of the comments maybe, do we really need a 5-person commission? I can't confirm or deny that, but if we have to extend anyway, then that is something that I would like to revisit and at least see if we can get somebody who can participate and can commit the time.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that, Kathy? I mean, I think those are good points, and, you know, I mean, we've done a lot of work. I mean, I'm not sure if we did add a member, how we'd get that person up to speed at this point.
It's a big question. I mean, I think we would just do our best to get them up to speed. I'm not certain what our report would look like or what your report would look like for August, if you're able to issue a full report, if the report is that we're not done. Because if it's not done, then that person can get up to speed. We can, you know, they can listen to the minutes, we can talk to them, we can share all the information with them. you know, my hope is that at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, we'll be appointing a replacement.
In that meeting is August 21st?
That's correct.
Okay,
Unless we were to have a special meeting in the interim, but I don't see that on the horizon.
yeah, okay. All right. Anybody have anything else? No?
I just do as public comment when it comes up.
Yeah, okay. All right, if nothing else, I'll move on to public comment.
I
Ann?
actually have a comment, yeah.
Oh, could you
do
come
I
up
need
to the microphone, please, Annie?
Which is,
Oh, right here.
oh, okay,
Just,
thank you.
is the green light on?
I will, yes,
Okay.
thank you. Yes, thank you, that
Just
was.
please state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Annie Hornish, 864 Thrall Avenue. One, where you can go to get the information on who's elected versus who's appointed is the Secretary of the State. They'll have that information in a heartbeat for you for all the positions. And the second thing, I did serve on Granby's Charter Revision Commission many years ago, and it was a fantastic experience. It took us, I want to say, at least 10 months to get the job done, and it was very intense. A lot of reading, a lot of research. It was a comprehensive look at the charter revision, which is a little bit different from what you're doing. It's a little bit more narrow, even though, you know, you can open it up to anything you want now that you have it open. And I would really recommend that you really take your time with this, and there's other areas that can be improved, like to accommodate for like Zoom meetings and things like that, that we haven't addressed yet. That is part of the modern world in meetings. But I would suggest taking your time, and it took us 10 months. It was a bipartisan effort. It was a great experience, but it was, it's something that shouldn't be rushed. And I'm sensing that this is a little bit rushed. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Neil Hornish, Thorell Avenue. If you're compiling a list to see which towns have these positions appointed or elected, I'd also suggest adding to see which towns have a town manager, to see if there's any correlation between the two. Thank you.
Any other public comment in the room? All right, I don't see anybody online. Okay.
So
Oh,
this is Kathy
sorry.
Harrington
Yeah.
on the Board of Selectmen. I just wanted to make a very brief public comment in defense of Mr. DeBoer, in case any of the comments that were made previously have any negative connotation. It's a great loss for this commission that he will not be on here. I actually, spoke with him and told him that I was very disappointed, but understood his decision. I think he was a great member. It's going to be a huge loss, and I feel it's a very sad state of affairs that he felt compelled to step down. And I just want to make sure that there is no negative connotation attached to his impending resignation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Is
this
the
is
light on?
Sandra Janik, Prospect Street. And thank you, Kathy. I did not mean any negative connotation whatsoever towards Mr. DeFore. I'm merely pointing out the fact that there's a vacant chair, and he's made it clear he doesn't want to participate, and I appreciate that and respect that. And I just see you going forward with multiple meetings and moving real far down this path with, again, 4 members. So I'm just going to leave it there. But thank you, Kathy. It was I did not mean anything bad for Mr. DeFore whatsoever.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for what you did.
Please. yeah.